As the Department of Justice now claims that no Epstein client list exists and key Epstein files remain sealed, the public is now left with more questions than answers. Trump, once promising full disclosure, has seen his base turn against him after backtracking on that promise. Jail footage is missing, victims remain unheard, and prosecutors continue protecting ghosts. In light of these developments, I'm re-releasing one of the most explosive episodes I've ever recorded, with investigative journalist Nick Bryant. This is the second half of that interview where Nick connects the Epstein underworld to the infamous Franklin scandal, a case that Nick spent years uncovering that mimics the Epstein case in damning detail. With a tidal wave of misinformation and conflicting narratives flooding in after the DOJ's recent claims, now feels like the perfect time to re-release my deep dive conversation with Nick Bryant, an investigative journalist who spent decades exposing the truth behind elite cover-ups like Epstein's. We dive into how a college dropout turned high school math teacher became a billionaire financier with ties to the Mossad. We break down Epstein's leap into the elite, the blackmail empire he built through high-powered connections and surveillance tapes, and the eerie overlap between the Epstein and Diddy cases. From his mysterious rise to his suspicious death, we follow the breadcrumbs through intelligence operations, compromised prosecutors, and a system designed to protect the predators, not the victims. If you think you know the Epstein story, this will make you question everything you've been told and everything that's still being hidden. This isn't about conspiracy theory. This is about documented abuse, media complicity, and systemic rot. If you're wondering why there's no client list and how the hell Epstein's blackmail empire survived in plain sight, then let's get into it. We are back, and we left off at the end of the Franklin scandal. And you've said multiple times on multiple podcasts, because that's part of what I do. I stalk the podcasts of guests that come on the show. You've said that the Franklin scandal and the Epstein cover-up are carbon copies of each other. What are the elements that you see with Epstein, before we dive into the specifics, because there's a shit ton we're going to get into? What are sort of the overarching similarities you see between the Epstein cover-up and the Franklin scandal?
Well, you had a couple of pedophilic pimps. You had Maxwell and Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, flying kids around the country and actually around the world too. Also that island. Epstein was hooked up to intelligence. All his houses were wired for audiovisual blackmail. A grand jury was used to cover up Epstein. And Epstein, like Spence, killed himself, or ostensibly killed himself. But Ghislaine Maxwell kept her mouth shut, and now she's living in a dormitory. She got a sentence of 20 years. The Ghislaine Maxwell, it really shows just how corrupt it is, because she trafficked children for 25 years. And she was indicted on one count of child trafficking. And actually, all of her indictments, or a number of her indictments, had conspiracy with it. But there was no other conspirators that were indicted. That should kind of give people an idea of how corrupt that is.
Yeah, you've said that her trial was a sham. That
it was carefully choreographed.
Yeah. How was, or actually, let's get into Jeffrey Epstein's origin story first, because if we jump straight into the trial, it might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Where does Epstein come from? What's his background story?
He is essentially a blue-collar background from Coney Island. Not too far from here.
Yeah. And so blue-collar, like Spence and King. That sort of upbringing.
Yeah. And I don't know how, but he ended up at Interlochen, which is a very prestigious arts camp, in 1967. If you go to my website, I've got pictures of little Jeffrey Epstein. at Interlaken. And I've got someone that is a doppelganger for William Barr.
The Attorney General?
Yes, that didn't go after. Actually, William Barr was the Attorney General for Franklin, and then he was the Attorney General for Epstein under Trump.
Wow. So William Barr is connected to the Franklin scandal and the Epstein cover-up.
Yeah, he played an integral role in covering both of them up.
Okay.
And I believe that he and Epstein went to Interlaken Art Camp at the same time. Interlaken can't lie about Epstein because there was an Epstein Lodge. Epstein gave them $500,000 to build an Epstein. And I don't, needless to say, it's no longer called Epstein Lodge or whatever. It had Epstein something.
Yeah. I'm sure they didn't give the money back, though. I'm sure they kept that.
No. The place was already built. So,
okay, I gotcha.
But I've got yearbooks from that art camp. And what's really bizarre is there's no names. Have you ever seen a yearbook that has no names?
I can't say I have.
No. And your viewers and listeners can go to my website, nickbryantnyc.com, and they can see a little Jeffrey Epstein, and they can see who I believe is a little Don Barr, not Don Barr, but William Barr. But Interlaken said that William Barr was never there. But what's interesting is 7 years later, Donald Barr, William Barr's father, hires Jeffrey Epstein to teach at Dalton, which is one of the most prestigious preparatory schools in the United States, in the world. And Jeffrey Epstein is a college dropout. So that doesn't make a lot of sense.
So Donald Barr is the principal of Dalton.
He was the headmaster of Dalton who hired Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay. So Epstein, college dropout, gets hired to teach at one of the most prestigious high schools in America.
Yes.
Where does he go from there? How does he start to infiltrate high society?
Well, he goes to Bear Stearns, and then in 1988, and this is stunning, actually. In 1988, Les Wexner, who owns The Limited, which has Victoria's Secret, Tommy Hilfiger, et cetera, gives Jeffrey Epstein the keys to his kingdom, gives him power of attorney over everything. His billions of dollars. Whatever Jeffrey Epstein wants to do with his money, he can do.
What year is this?
1988.
So how old is Epstein at this point?
He would be in his 30s.
Okay, so he's a 30-year-old college dropout that taught for a few years.
Yeah.
Gets a position at Bear Stearns, but he's not a billionaire financier.
No.
He's not managing billionaire portfolios at this point, but a billionaire hands Epstein the keys
to his
billionaire fortune.
Yeah. Now, this is interesting. I can't recall if it's the New York Times or Vanity Fair, but when I said stunning, this is stunning. The reason why, and I wish I could remember if it was Vanity Fair or New York Times. It's one or the other. I mean, both of them played an integral role in covering all this up, but the reason why, and they said this, they wrote it, it was published. The reason why Les Wexner gave Jeffrey Epstein the keys to his kingdom is because he was lonely. They said that. Yeah.
That was published. A quote from Les Wexner said, "I was lonely."
No, the magazine.
The magazine
said it was because he was lonely.
Okay.
That he gave Jeffrey Epstein the keys to his kingdom. He was lonely.
Was it some sort of like Onion type article?
No,
sarcastic?
No,
they were genuinely reporting.
This is the bullshit that has been sold to America.
Yeah.
And because the mainstream media doesn't want to see justice here, I've been following Epstein since 2011, 2012. And I've never seen any major mainstream media scream for justice. They love to dig up salacious facts,
Yeah.
but none of them scream for
The
justice.
the lonely thing is weird though because Les Wexner has billions of dollars at this point. He could easily pay a companion for much less. That there are people that would hang out with him
Well, he's
for
married
hundreds of
and he's got children. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
But he has resources. He could go fuck off on a private jet somewhere, find some, companionship for much less than signing over the keys to his fortune, but yet he says I'm lonely or Variety, whoever reports Les Wexner is lonely.
It was either Vanity. I think it was Vanity Fair. It was either Vanity Fair or the New York Times.
And reports that Les Wexner is feeling lonely, and therefore to cure his loneliness, he gives mid-30s dropout
Yes
the authority over his entire fortune.
Yes.
I mean, it's crazy, but it also doesn't make sense at all.
Because I guess that Jeffrey would be his friend then.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard sell to not become your friend at that point.
There's so much bullshit that has been written about Epstein. So much bullshit that it's frustrating to me.
Yeah. What is some of the bullshit that was written about Epstein before all of the pedophile island and the dark corners of his personality came to light? What sort of BS narrative headline traffic was Epstein perpetuating back in the day?
Well, he was a successful hedge fund manager, and then it came out that he was like a lone pedophile. Like, you've got Lee Harvey Oswald as a lone shooter. Epstein was a lone pedophile. And the Franklin scandal had been published in 2009, 2010. I did not want to investigate another network. I really didn't. But I kept on seeing these articles where he's a lone pedophile, and I'm not buying it, considering how well I know Franklin. And then there's that grand jury that was completely cooked that said that he didn't molest a single child. So I was living in Brooklyn. I was pretty broke, but I had enough money to go to Florida. And I went to Florida and I started investigating. And that's when I acquired his little black book, which I'd eventually put up on the internet in 2015. And he had like long lists of victims. And I started calling victims. And they were talking about being flown around into an island. I mean, before any of this was reported. And at that point, I knew that this was another network.
Were the victims also in the black book, or was the black book just contacts for pedophiles or, celebrities?
The black book had everything. Everybody.
What were the most intriguing parts of the black book that stood out to you? The structure of it, names, anything that you would see when you were flipping through the pages?
Well, it was a who's who. The ruling class of the United States. The most powerful people. George Mitchell. Epstein. Now, Epstein, how the black book, how I got it. I can give you kind of a general explanation of it. Alfredo Rodriguez was Epstein's house manager. And he made a copy of the black book. And Rodriguez wanted to make some money off of this. And there was an attorney there were attorneys that were filing civil lawsuits against Epstein on behalf of his victims. And he called up one of the attorneys. And he said, I will sell you the Holy Grail. And Epstein, or I'll sell you Epstein's Holy Grail, which was the black book. And then the attorney called the FBI, and the FBI did a sting on him. And then the FBI ultimately got the book, and then I got the book through some people who got the book from the FBI.
Was everyone in this book someone who was participating in the Epstein underworld, the pedophile
No,
parties, trafficking?
but a lot of them were. And Alfredo Rodriguez circled people that he thought that he had personally witnessed someone being in cahoots with Epstein. And but then there's people like Clinton, because Epstein was providing women to Clinton when Clinton was in the White House.
Mm.
There's people like Clinton. There's 25 contact numbers for Clinton.
Was Epstein bringing women to the White House?
Yeah, he was bringing women to the White House.
Okay.
Not minors, but adults for Clinton.
Are there White House staff or anyone who can attest to that, or is it more?
Yeah,
rumors?
no, it's. You can go to Google Epstein Clinton White House, and
Gotcha.
and there'll be some mainstream magazine articles about it from the UK.
Okay. So at what point, because Epstein now he's in with Les Wexner. He's
Les is lonely.
Les is lonely,
Yeah.
so he gives over his fortune. I think doesn't he become a name for just high level finance management? People are handing him over billions of dollars, like not just Les Wexner, but other wealthy people are also giving him their money to manage. He's known as this high level guy that kind of comes out of nowhere.
There's so much misinformation there. Leon Black, who was head of Apollo, which is a huge hedge fund, gave Epstein $150 million. Now, he said that he gave Epstein $150 million because Epstein was going to be able to save him money on his taxes. That's what Leon Black said. That's what our media reported. As if Leon Black doesn't have, like, Apollo management is huge. I mean, they've got a floor of accountants that are working on saving Apollo management from giving too much to the IRS. But that is another bogus cover story that the media has gone with, that Jeffrey Epstein helped Leon Black save $150 million.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm getting at, is that if I walked into, XYZ hedge fund or bank, and I said, I'm worth $5 billion, I would like to give you $1 billion, I would have a team of 30 people and 20 more interns assigned to my account that are going to help me manage my money any which way.
Yeah.
And I'd be on calls. I'd have people that are catering to me 24/7 because I'm giving the bank so much goddamn money. But for some reason, these billionaires who know how to keep money and stay wealthy are just, giving it to Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes.
This high power broker finance guy that just comes out of the blue with not really any discernible track record in finance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he swindled some people, but I think a lot of it was blackmail.
When do you think he enters the blackmail world? Do you think that's with Les Wexner, or when do you think he start? Or let me put it another way. Do you believe that Jeffrey Epstein was intelligence, that he was acting on behalf of some intelligence agency?
Absolutely.
At what point do you think he became compromised and then started to act like the asset that they wanted him to be?
It's like with King and Spence. We can make some extrapolations, but it's impossible to know. I do not know when Epstein got turned, but at some point in the 80s, he got turned.
Yeah.
He was working at Dalton in 74 and 76, and then he went to Bear Stearns, and then he was with some other Wall Street companies. But in 1988, he emerges with Les Wexner's billions, so he can do whatever he wants at that point. And then people like Leon Blacker give him $150 million.
Yeah. There's a quote, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a new book called Selling Sexy, which is a book that came out on Victoria's Secret, all the things that happen behind the scenes. And there's a quote about what Les Wexner giving Epstein the power of attorney. And this is directly from that book. It says, quote, a former top company executive stated, it just makes no sense why Wexner did any of that to allow Epstein to manage all his money. It was so baffling. Everyone thought Les was such a retail genius. And then he did this. It was so bizarre. So, yeah, it just makes no sense, Epstein's involvement with Les Wexner, unless you like build some story behind it, or the lonely thing. Like it just doesn't add up.
Les Wexner had big time ties to the mafia.
Really?
Yeah. And I wrote an article for Sheer Post where I get into his ties to the mafia. And there was a guy named Frank Walsh who did most of the carding for L Brands. And he was a Genovese guy.
Carding is like delivering products, stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah. And actually there was an attorney that worked for L Brands, not specifically for L Brands, but L Brands used that law firm. And this attorney was like the point man, the law firm's point man for L Brands and Les Wexner. And he was shot execution style in Columbus, Ohio, in the middle of the day. 222s to the back of his head. And there was an investigation, and there was someone at the Columbus Police Department who wrote a homicide report. And Wexner was the one that was named as most likely.
Really?
Yeah.
There's a homicide report that
Yes.
people can look at that
Yes.
names
Yes.
Les Wexner.
Yes. And you can go to my article that was published by the Sheer Post. Google Nick Bryant Sheer Post Epstein, and I put the whole report so you can link onto it.
And so Arthur Shapiro was the lawyer for Wexner? Or
Yes. Yeah. Well, he was a partner at a law firm.
a partner? Okay.
That did work for the L Brands.
Okay.
And he was shot in the middle of the day in Columbus, Ohio. And I called his wife. I was trying to get information, and but she didn't want to talk. I understood. I never called her back. But the police chief ordered that homicide report to be destroyed.
Wow.
And someone smuggled it out of there and then gave it to somebody who I eventually got it from.
So was Arthur Shapiro, do you think he saw something? Or like, why would Lex Wexner have his own lawyer killed?
I have no idea.
Wild shit.
But yeah, if your listeners, viewers want to look at the police report.
The police report is out there.
Yeah.
So to fast forward a little bit, the Palm Beach Police Department does an investigation into Epstein back in 2005. So almost 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
How does that investigation play out?
What happens is a 14-year-old girl tells her mother that she's been molested by Jeffrey Epstein. And the mother, I think it's her stepmother, takes her to the Palm Beach Police Department. And she identifies Epstein. She talks about his anatomy. She talks about his house. She talks about the interior of his house. So the Palm Beach Police Department, under Michael Ryder, he's the chief, they investigate for about a year. And they get the statements of 5 victims, and then they have statements of other people corroborating the victims, but they know of 17 other victims. So they know of 22 victims. And they were ready to they executed a search warrant on Epstein's home, and they were going to arrest him for 5 counts of child abuse. And I mean, they just thought it was a fait accompli that they were going to arrest him.
Yeah, done deal.
But that case got taken away from them and was given to a grand jury.
Okay.
And that grand jury concluded that Jeffrey Epstein hadn't molested a single child. Now, and one of the girls that was called, she'd been molested by Jeffrey Epstein when she was 14, and she was testifying when she was 16. And then there was another one that had been molested by Epstein since she was 16, and she was 18, but the last time I believe she had sex with Epstein was when she was 17. And the prosecutors calling these girls prostitutes.
The prosecutors, the special prosecutors are calling them to the stand and then basically calling them whores for getting molested by Epstein.
You can go to my website and I deconstruct that. The grand jury testimony came out some months ago, and I did a podcast on the grand jury. Just kind of deconstructing it. But this poor girl, I mean, she's 16 years old at the time, but she was molested by Epstein when she was 14. And a grand jury says, you know, what you did is wrong, right? You know, I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
And that is how much power special prosecutors have over grand jurors. Again,
who is overseeing that grand jury? This was back in 2005, 2006?
2006, yeah.
Who was overseeing that?
Her name is Layla Bolavlatic or something like it's a I think it's an Eastern German name. I always mispronounce it though.
Yeah, but she was the special prosecutor.
Yes, yeah.
Dressing down these girls on the stand.
No, she only called 2 girls.
2 girls.
Yeah. And then she called people in law enforcement that talked about the problems that the girls were having. Like that they've been busted for marijuana or they've been to rehab or stuff like that. As if, you know, getting molested by Jeffrey Epstein is going to help their mental health. I mean, the whole thing was insane.
It's crazy because, I mean, if you're the special prosecutor, you're supposed to be representing the state of Florida in a sense, or so you're just trying to get to the bottom of it. But the approach that this woman, you know, Layla, was taking as the special prosecutor, it sounds like she was more of the defense attorney for Jeffrey Epstein than she was prosecuting the actual crimes that allegedly happened.
She had one agenda, and that was to make sure that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't there. Could you Google her name? It's bothering me. I cannot recall her name.
Let me,
Bella Lovic or something like that?
Special prosecutor, Jeffrey Epstein. Layla, let me see if that comes up.
I don't think it's Layla. It's Lana.
Lana
Belalovic or something like that. I can't.
Lana Belalovic.
Yeah.
Belalovic. Assistant State Attorney Lana Belalovic led the prosecution against Epstein during the 2006 grand jury proceedings.
I always have problems with Eastern European names. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
My mind doesn't.
Just one. I mean, they're tough. They've got a lot of syllables, a lot of consonants.
But this is troubling to me. Okay, you just expect guys to be dogs, to be perverts, or a lot of them. And most guys that I know, they've, acted like pigs, or a lot of the guys that I know have acted like pigs. I mean, you just kind of expect that guys are that way. But to see a woman cover up child sexual abuse, that hurts me more than to see guys do it. You would think that there was some kind of maternal instinct that would prevent them from being so corrupt when it comes to the molestation of children. But
I mean, yeah, there are dark forces out there, regardless of gender. You'd think the same thing with Ghislaine Maxwell. How could a woman that was leading these girls to slaughter, how could you do that as a female to essentially, send them to get molested, to get taken advantage of repeatedly, scarring, trauma, all that shit that goes along with it. You wouldn't think that, especially a woman would be able to do that, but they're female pimps,
I know.
fucking doing dark shit, sitting on the throne.
But isn't it worse though when a woman does it? Do you think it just?
I don't know if it's worse because the result is the same, but you would almost think it might be slightly worse in the sense that if a let's say a girl is in Epstein's house or one of his compounds and she sees a woman walk in, you think that a girl would be able to connect with an older woman and there would be some sympathy, and you might think, oh, there's a way out of this. So in a sense, Ghislaine Maxwell walks in a room, you might have a sense of hope. And that does maybe make it a little bit worse to have that ripped out of you and realize she's also part of this. She is also a dark force working alongside Epstein.
Well, Epstein got some girls from South Africa, and he was doing a trip with Bill Clinton. And these women just thought that because he was with Bill Clinton, he was on the up and up. And one of them, Juliet Bryant, who is a very sweet woman. So they said, you're going to be a model. We'll fly you to New York. Bada bing. And so they flew her to New York. And then her first day in New York, she gets a call from one of Epstein's henchwomen, Sarah Kellen. And Sarah Kellen says, we're going to the island. And don't worry about packing stuff. We'll have clothes for you to wear.
How old is Juliet Bryant at this point?
She's probably 20.
Okay.
And then when they're 35,000 feet up, Epstein, right in front of all these girls, and Juliet Bryant has someone perform oral sex on him. So these girls know what kind of fate is awaiting them at the island. And
yeah, it's like a power play.
Well, Epstein's just showing them,
yeah,
this is going to be your fate.
So to go back to the 2006 grand jury, so Epstein gets let off on that. Then there's that's different from the sweetheart deal, right? Epstein eventually gets a deal, or is that part of it?
That is part of it. Okay,
that's part of it. Okay.
What happens is Michael Ryder, who is a real hero in this story, he's the chief of the Palm Beach Police Department. He goes ballistic because they knew of 23 underage girls that had been molested. So he goes ballistic. And then the Justice Department jumps into the fray, and then Alexander Acosta, who is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, is going to impanel a grand jury, but then he is told that Epstein is intelligence and that he has to stand down.
Yeah.
Now, constitutionally, I believe that there are only two people that can tell a U.S. attorney to stand down. It's either got to come from the president or it's got to come from the attorney general. I mean, it can be delivered. The message can be delivered by a minion of the president or the attorney general. But for a U.S. attorney to stand down, to tell a U.S. attorney to stand down, that requires a tremendous amount of power.
Yeah.
And then that's when the sweetheart deal is made.
Okay. And then Acosta, I mean, I've seen this. I looked this up just to see for myself, but Acosta quite literally says, I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence. He was above my pay grade. Which is another one of those wild things, like Tim Burchett saying, there are honeypots in Congress. You don't think the attorney general would come out and say, yeah, I was told to stand down. Epstein was actually associated with intelligence or, some operation behind the scenes.
And he has never denied saying that.
No, yeah, it's on record. He couldn't.
No, but people have questioned him about it, and he's never denied saying it.
Yeah. So the sweetheart deal, it's a weird agreement because it's a non-prosecution agreement.
Okay,
which
what happens with that is, so the feds tell the state that really corrupt grand jury got Epstein on one count of adult pandering. And then the feds...
What is adult pandering, like prostitution? Or
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And then the feds said you've got to include one count of child abuse. So they included one count of child abuse. And he was looking at 20 years. And he was given 18 months in the county jail, and he served 13 months. And he had his little wing dressed up like the Taj Mahal, and he was paying the people at the jail all kinds of money. I mean, it was...
Was this the same one where he was allowed to leave during the day,
and he could leave during the
just
day
had to sleep there at night?
Yeah, to molest. He could leave. Yeah, he was molesting girls while he was there. And with Epstein, at that point, then he just he gets out of jail and he just starts doing his thing again.
So how is Epstein choreographing his blackmail pedophile network? Is it similar to the Franklin scandal? How is that all coming together with Epstein? How's he sort of orchestrating that?
Okay, with Maria Farmer and Virginia Giuffre, all his homes were wired for audiovisual blackmail. Although Epstein knew that the Palm Beach Police Department was going to serve a search warrant on his home, he still didn't get rid of all the hidden cameras. And there were hidden cameras in his place in New Mexico. There were hidden cameras on the island. And then there were hidden cameras in his mansion on Fifth Avenue. And actually, earlier I talked about Spence and the room with the monitors. Epstein showed Maria Farmer, this is what Maria Farmer says, is that Epstein brought her in, and there were men, as in plural, looking at the monitors. And the monitors were all the bedrooms and all the bathrooms.
Really?
Yeah.
So there were just guys back there, either, acting as security or producer, or maybe just to enjoy what they were seeing. Some combination of that, but Maria Farmer, and this is back in 95 or 96 when she was reporting a lot of this. It was one of the earliest cases. She walked into a room and saw guys just sitting there with screens and monitors. Two guys.
Yeah.
So when the FBI raids Epstein's compounds, places, place in New York, other places around the country, the island, there are thousands of nude photos. There are CDs, DVDs that likely have underage girls on them. Where are these tapes? Why are these tapes not being brought to light?
Well, because it's cover-up. The FBI drilled his safe and got all those DVDs. And I think some of them were child pornography, and I also think some of them were compromise stuff. And it's funny, when Epstein died, the Fed said that that his case was closed. So I did a Freedom of Information Act request. I didn't want the DVDs. I wanted reports on the DVDs. And then I got an email from the feds saying that the case was ongoing. And then I tried it 6 months later, and the case was still ongoing. So he's been dead for a number of years, but the case is still ongoing.
Do you think the tapes still exist or they've been destroyed?
I don't know. I don't know.
If you could go back in time and witness the death of Jeffrey Epstein, what do you think you would see?
I mean, I think that he was given the same deal that Spence was given. You can either kill yourself or, we can help you. Vice called me and they wanted to interview me about Epstein's suicide. And I said to them, and I always say this on podcasts, that is a red herring. Epstein's.
No.
What the crime is the government covering up child trafficking, which means that the government is aiding and abetting child trafficking. And then we know who a bunch of the procurers are. We know who the perps are. That's what the media should be focusing on, not whether or not he killed himself. They should be focusing on why is our government aiding and abetting child trafficking, and why aren't these child molesters being brought to justice? That's what we need to focus on.
Yeah. So you think there is a chance that Epstein did take his own life as part of a deal similar to what Craig Spence was offered?
Yeah, I mean, that's entirely within the realm of reality.
Yeah. But yeah, it is. I do agree with you in the sense that whenever you see Epstein covered in the media, it's usually very surface level, and it's the most scandalous details of things that are going on, whether, it's Bill Clinton on a flight 27 times or with Les Wexner, but it never goes any deeper to incriminate someone or ask questions that would lead to a direct link, a direct incrimination.
Justice. No mainstream media has screamed for justice. I mean, that shows you that our mainstream media is being run by ethical eunuchs.
Yeah. Why is Ghislaine Maxwell still alive?
The reason why Ghislaine Maxwell is still alive is the reason why Lawrence King is still alive. I'm sure that she had the talk. Ghislaine, you saw what happened to Jeffrey. Now, you can keep your mouth shut. We'll take care of you. And when you get out, you'll have lots of money. But you're going to have to do some time. And she's doing time, but she's already in a dormitory. I mean, she's already in the cushest of the cush.
Yeah.
And usually prisoners that are in dormitories have done a lot of time, and they've been exemplary prisoners, and they're getting ready to be released. Those are usually the people that end up in dormitories. She was in a dormitory after less than 2 years, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, would it surprise you if she was released anytime soon?
She appealed. There was the non-prosecution agreement.
Yeah.
Which, so the feds worked that out with Epstein. Is the non-prosecution agreement basically said that Jeffrey Epstein will compensate his victims and that no one affiliated with Jeffrey Epstein will be brought to justice.
And that's the Epstein compensation fund. That's part of the deal.
The Epstein, eventually there was the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund, which is very corrupt. We can get into that later if you'd like.
Yeah, we can get into it now. How is the compensation fund corrupt?
Okay, so Jeffrey Epstein trafficked girls for 25 years, and only 225 women have come forward. And the two people that are essentially in charge of the fund, that have created the criteria for the fund, are Jordana Feldman, and she played an integral role in the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund, and David Boies, one of the attorneys that's represented a bunch of girls. And David Boies is dirty, man. He's a dirty dirty dude.
How so?
He represented Harvey Weinstein. There's a group of Israeli former Mossad mercenaries called Black Cube, and they do dirty deeds. They're not dirt cheap, but they're definitely dirty deeds. The New York Times was going to publish an article about Weinstein, and he sicked Black Cube on their reporters. And then Rose McGowan was one of the first actresses to come forward, and he sicked Black Cube on her. And then Elizabeth Holmes, the grifter from Theranos. Boys was on the board, and people started to realize, whoa, Elizabeth Holmes is a grifter. He sicked Black Cube on them, too. And then he brought in definitely a CIA asset named Stan Pottinger. And Pottinger was an associate attorney general, and he covered up a number of things. Well, he was an associate attorney general. He covered up Kent State, where those 4 kids were murdered. He covered up the death of Martin Luther King. He covered up he tried to cover up Wounded Knee, which is when a number of people, when the American Indian movement occupied Wounded Knee, where that massacre had occurred. And then the judge found that he and the FBI had told too many lies, so he dismissed that. But and he was actually a partner of Gloria Steinem, and Steinem was a CIA asset. Now, Steinem said that she was a CIA asset from 1959 to 1961, but I've got an article from a feminist magazine in San Francisco that said that she was a CIA asset through most of the 60s. But anyway, Pottinger has covered up all these things. And then he gets out of the government after recovering, and he covered up COINTELPRO, which was the spine of... that
was like reading people's mail.
All kinds of
breaking
stuff.
into people's property.
All
taking information.
Tapping their phone, everything. He covered that up. He covered up so much stuff. But then when he got... when he left the government, he thought, well, I need to make some money, so I'm going to be a criminal. And at the time that I'm talking about, the Iranians under Ayatollah Khomeini had taken the American hostages at the embassy. And Pottinger was working with 2 Iranians, telling them how to do arms deals. So there wouldn't be any problems. So there wouldn't be any blowback. This is treason. I mean,
he was showing or telling the Iranians how to smuggle arms.
Yes.
Into Iran?
Yes, into Iran. And we're essentially at war with Iran. I mean, this is treason. And that paragon of integrity, Rudolph Giuliani, was overseeing the case. And this is like this is actually mind-boggling. It's right up there with Les Wexner saying he's lonely. So they're recording Stan Pottinger with these 2 Iranians, and he's teaching them how to do the deals. And the 2 Iranians get indicted, but Rudolph Giuliani in the Department of Justice loses the tapes.
With Pottinger.
With Pottinger on them. Yeah, loses the tape. I mean, you would think that they would maybe get him off on a technicality or something like that. But no, they lost the tapes.
How do we know about the tapes if they were lost? Was there a transcript or something? Or
I mean,
they were just spoken about?
I'm pulling articles from that's from the Washington Post.
Okay.
Which is about as straightforward as you can get. So Pottinger walked from that. And then this is the guy that David Boies brings in to litigate for the Victims' Compensation Fund. So you have an intelligence op covering up an intelligence op. And another thing about the victim, so 225 women applied. 150 women were awarded compensation. 8 didn't take the deal, and 142 did. But if you get money from this the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund, that's it. You cannot go after any other perpetrators.
Really?
You sign away your ability to go after perpetrators.
So you say, I'll take the check,
Yes.
but I can no longer take legal action against
Any-
Epstein or any one of his cohorts, anyone related.
Any of his perpetrators.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Seems pretty fucked up for a victim fund.
that it's totally fucked up, and I'll tell you some more stuff.
Yeah.
But so that victims fund is keeping those women quiet, is doing something that the government couldn't do. It's making those victims mute about their other perps. Now, I've been at writing about child trafficking for 22 years. And I've spoken, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation has international summit every year. I've spoken at 3 of those. I've spoken at other international conferences. I contributed a chapter to a book on, the chapter I wrote was about child trafficking, but it was, the editors were from the International Society for the Study of Trauma and Dissociation. And 2 of them were psychiatrists, one was a psychologist. So there have been some people in the anti-trafficking movement or who work with victims that have embraced my work. And I know a psychologist. She's an eminent psychologist. I mean, she's been on television quite a bit. She had a client who she believes was trafficked when she was under the age of 10 by Epstein. And she was able to describe Epstein's home and a number of other things. And she was denied compensation. And then I know another therapist who also, and she's an esteemed therapist too, she also had a client that she felt was trafficked by Epstein under the age of 10. And both of them applied for compensation, and neither one of them got any money. Because the cover story on Epstein is the youngest one is 14.
Yeah. As if that's some sort of moral standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
14 years old will compensate. Anything below that, you're on your own.
Yeah. I mean, it's really sick. I mean, and why isn't the media talking about this? I mean.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's crazy. Like you were saying before, that everything is surface level and salacious, but no one is actually digging into the things that could lead to justice, retribution, and penalty for the people who were orchestrating this whole thing.
It's really unfortunate.
So we've gone through a lot of the connections between the Franklin scandal and Epstein. And William Barr was, you've said, the nexus between those two. For Diddy, it seems that, and you've covered this extensively, that the nexus between Epstein and Diddy is Damien Williams.
Yes.
Talk about Damien Williams and his connection to Epstein and Diddy. Okay,
Damien Williams is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. He's considered the most powerful federal law enforcement agents in the city, and he was part of the Clinton machine. And then he was given Soros's brother Paul has a fund, the Paul and Daisy Soros Fund, where Damien Williams' parents were from Jamaica, so he's first generation, and they give sizable grants, like $90,000. Yeah. They gave him $90,000 to go through Yale Law School.
Oh, wow.
And Peter Soros is on the board of the the Paul and Daisy Soros Foundation because he's their son. And he's circled twice in Epstein's Black Book.
Maybe the second circle cancels out the first one. Maybe he's saying, all right, he's a bad guy with one circle. Actually, I messed up. He's actually a good guy.
So this is either a very bizarre coincidence or it's very ominous. But Damien Williams was the guy that choreographed the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. There were only 4 victims called, and those 4 victims had only been molested by Epstein and Maxwell. So they knew nothing about the other perps. It was very, very carefully choreographed. And he is the one that called the grand jury for P. Diddy. And P. Diddy has been indicted on 3 counts. Now, P. Diddy, there's 2 of the lawsuits against him. Well, there's a new wave of lawsuits, but there was the first 8. 2 of them were minors when they say that P. Diddy had molested them. And then there was Little Rod, who's a hip-hop producer, and he said that Diddy was trafficking children all the time. And he also talked about the hidden cameras, and then there's a Homeland Security officer that under anonymity has talked about the hidden cameras. And so we have kind of and then there are other people that have talked about Diddy's propensity for blackmail. And with Damien Williams, so Maxwell was indicted on all these conspiracies, but nobody else was indicted. Diddy is indicted on conspiracy, but no one else is indicted. And Williams isn't going after him for trafficking children. I mean, it's also a corrupt grand jury. And I was saying that, well, that grand jury started to wind in, or was impaneled in May. And I've been saying Diddy is going to get indicted on something, and then maybe one of his kids or something. But I was wrong. I mean, he's the only guy that's getting indicted. Yeah. So Damien Williams is the nexus between the Epstein cover-up and then now it's the P. Diddy cover-up.
So Diddy comes from an interesting background too, because he doesn't come from money, just like King and Spence and Epstein. I think his dad was a drug dealer, ended up getting killed, murdered. Diddy works his way into the music industry. Obviously, he's credited with discovering Notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls, Usher, killing it. Where do you think Diddy starts to stray? Where do you think he gets involved in the, molestation? He's also had cameras in his house. There was footage recorded or recovered of allegedly him filming these freak offs, having audio-visual blackmail like Epstein and Franklin scandal. Where do you think he starts to stray, Diddy, to get into this whole underworld?
Okay. In 1993, he and Clive Davis formed Bad Boy Records. Now, Clive Davis is a dirty, dirty guy. He's launched a career of a lot of rock stars, and he's ripped a lot of people off. But he's been indicted 3 times for filing cooked tax returns. He's been busted 3 times for defrauding the IRS. It's against the law for record companies to give radio stations or DJs money. It's called payola. It's against the law. He has been busted for the largest payola scam of all time. And then, and these are just the things that we know about. There was a Genovese guy named Pasquale Falcone who was smuggling heroin into the United States, and he got busted. And then the feds started digging into Falcone, and then they came all across all these shell companies that Davis had set up with Falcone, and Davis was president of CBS Records, so he was funneling money from CBS Records to these shell companies, and him and Falcone were splitting it up. And this is the criminality that we know about the guy. And you know how many days he spent in jail for everything that I've just told you?
How many?
Not one.
So he's got the payola scandal, 3 tax fraud violations, and the shell companies with the heroin guy, Genovese crime family.
Yeah. Now,
I mean, he's rich though, right? So he knows how to skirt shit. I feel like rich people, business execs, they always find a way to do something behind the scenes, settlements to avoid jail time.
It all depends on the kind of deal that they're willing to make with the feds. It all depends upon that.
So,
but that's
Clive Davis is the connection you think to Diddy sort of flipping into that sort of shit.
That's what I believe.
Do you think there's a case for Diddy being an intelligence asset?
Well, okay, Diddy, given his association with Clive Davis and all the stuff that he's gotten away with over the years, and he hasn't spent a day in jail. So
not yet. We'll see what happens with
well, now he's in jail under suicide watch.
Yeah.
But with the hidden cameras, the thing about blackmail artists, Spence started having a lot of media on him. And he was no longer good as a blackmail artist because you've got to be kind of anonymous if you're a blackmailer. Epstein started to have a lot of media on him because it was coming out what he was doing. And lawsuits were being filed against P. Diddy. As of March last year, there were 8 lawsuits. Now there's a whole wave of lawsuits. And 25 of them are minors. So P. Diddy has been molesting children for a very long time without any problems. But these lawsuits that started to get generated, they started, I believe, with Cassie Ventura, that started to get generated, put a lot of media on him. And again, you're not going to be a successful blackmailer if you have a lot of media on you because people are going to just stay away from you. They know what to expect.
So these dark, malignant corners of society, as you've said, these black organizations that may be connected to intelligence, maybe intelligence doesn't, it doesn't even know about them or just chooses not to engage with them.
No, it's part of it.
You think it's part of intelligence?
Yeah.
Okay, so these organizations, dark organizations that are either part of or associated with intelligence, they are sort of like the deep state in the sense that they remain around, but they just pick different faces. Like, looks like Diddy may have been one of them, Epstein, Lawrence King, Craig Spence. Those are the disposables. Now that those people are gone, they're going to be searching for someone else if they haven't already found someone to sort of take the reins of that sort of blackmail.
There's a lot of networks operating right now. And I was told that there was an Epstein understudy. I was never able to get his name, but I've been told that there was an Epstein understudy.
Yeah. It makes sense if you have someone that could be taken out at any moment or that can go to jail and be given the choice to kill themselves or not, like Spence and Epstein, some evidence for that they were essentially given this choice that you would want to have a backup to take over the responsibility of the blackmail front when things go awry.
I don't think that there's a shortage of pedophiles in the country.
It doesn't seem like it.
That would be willing to make that deal.
Yeah.
If you look at just in our country, according to the Centers for Disease Control, and these are relatively conservative numbers, 25% of underage girls have been molested and 5% of underage boys. That's 50 million Americans have been molested. So there's a lot of pedophiles out there, and there's a lot of people that have been damaged by pedophiles. And we're never going to be able to eradicate child abuse. We're not going to be able to do that, but we can certainly make sure that our government is no longer taking part in it, is covering it up. I mean, we got to at least go that far as a society.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so if you're that dark organization, you're either it seems like you'd either be testing people out to see, do we have someone here who's willing to engage in pedophilia? If so, they'll slip up at some point, or they're just waiting for someone to get caught, and then they approach them and say, "We'll keep this out of the headlines. We'll keep you out of jail. We know what you're about. Maybe you're even married, you have kids, but like you're secretly going, off and fucking kids." And they essentially, it sounds like they come to you and say, you can do this as much as you want now, but you just have to also do audio visual blackmail for us with the people that you're engaging with.
And we're talking about guys that are psychopaths. King was a psychopath. Epstein was a psychopath. Diddy's a psychopath. They're all psychopaths.
Yeah. There was also an interesting connection between Diddy and Epstein, which was the security guard, or one of the heads of security for Epstein.
Fahim Mohammed. Well, actually, he was head of security for Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson, that was it.
And now there's a guy that's sitting on a lot of secrets, and now he's a security for, or was doing security for Diddy.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Is there anyone from either the Franklin scandal, Epstein, or Diddy that you want to talk to who you haven't been able to talk to yet?
There's definitely some people involved with Epstein that I'd like to talk to, and there's people involved with Diddy that I'd like to talk to.
Can you say specifically who you'd want to pick their brains if you got the chance?
People that were privy to what he was up to. Now, chances are they're not going to talk. I had a lot of success with the Franklin scandal, but it took me 7 years of just kind of like the ocean, just the waves, the waves.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, there isn't any specific names. I mean, I'd love to get Stan Ponzer to talk.
Yeah.
Or David Boies to talk, but they will never, ever talk to Nick Bryant. Actually, I was going to interview Boies at one point, and he pulled the plug on
it. Would it be, so obviously in your line of work, you want to be able to interview people who have done shady things, but your name is out there now. Is it illegal for you to say, I'm not, basically give a fake name, I'm a small-time journalist somewhere, and do an interview? Would you be able to use that interview?
I would never lie like that.
Okay.
I would never lie like that. Evil protects itself through two ways. Evil protects itself through lies, and evil protects itself through viciousness. And people don't want to believe that other people are that vicious. So when evil lies about it, people want to believe that. They don't want to deal with the cognitive dissonance. And if I was lying, when I embarked on the Franklin scandal, I decided I wasn't going to lie to get information, because then I would be playing in evil's court. And I just decided that I wouldn't do that.
Also easier to discredit if people can point to lies, and they can say, well, what else is a lie?
Like there's someone who I wanted to get their number. And you can call the electric company or the gas company and say, there's something going on with my gas, and could you guys call me? Do you have my number just to make
Mm.
sure before you send some people out? You can go that route
Yeah, there are ways to get around it.
to get numbers, but I decided I wasn't going to do
Yeah.
that.
Is there anything that we're missing with Diddy, Epstein, Franklin scandal, and anything that you'd want to bring up?
The only thing is, I would suggest that your viewers and listeners go to epsteinjustice.com. We're trying to make a difference, and we're going to make a difference. And if your viewers take a look at our website, look at what we've done, and because this has to, we've got to stop this. I mean, the government shouldn't be in the business of aiding and abetting child trafficking. I mean, that's just something that we need to stop it as a society.
I will link Epstein Justice for everyone who's listening and watching to go check that out. Where's the best place for people to follow your work as Nick Bryant?
NickBryantNYC.com is my website, and Nick_Bryant is my Twitter handle. And then I also have the Nick Bryant podcast.
Well, Nick, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.